Okay, so we'll start. Thank you, like to be there. Start.
Okay, let's begin the presentation then. So, my name is Oleg Ninashov. I am one of the Jenkins contributors. I work for CloudBees. I'm based in Neuchâtel, and today I will be talking about Jenkins and Java 11. So, it will be a pretty long talk, but it's a meetup. So, if you have any question, just raise your hand. No need to wait till the end of the presentation. And as I said in the beginning, I will adjust to the questions and to the audience because I have something like, I believe, 99 slides. Okay. So, but yeah, we will skip some depending on what you're interested in because yeah, Java is a big topic, Jenkins is a big topic, so yeah, we will adjust. So, yeah, now I work for CloudBees. As I said, I'm based in Neuchâtel. We have a lovely office there, maybe something like 30 people. Wadik Fournier in this room, he is one of my colleagues. Ksenia is also my colleague. So I work on several projects, including CloudBees Core. It's an enterprise offering for Jenkins, and CloudBees Jenkins support. It's support offered by CloudBees. But actually, I started using Jenkins as HATS in 2008. I was a Jenkins contributor since 2012. Currently, I'm a Jenkins core maintainer. I'm also a Jenkins ambassador. So it's a new program which is equal to Java Captains or Java Champions or Docker Captains. And which is more important, I'm leading Platform Seek. So this is a special interest group and responsible for Java support, operating system support, and a lot of low-level stuff. So, since it's a JAG, some background of my Java experience. Actually, I started from Java Mobile Edition and Java J# in 2006. I believe J# is just dead. Maybe it died at this time. Java ME is also not quite popular. But yeah, actually, I came from embedded hardware. In 2010, I started patching HATS in Jenkins because I needed automation for my hardware projects. Then, of course, one of the only solutions is Jenkins because it's extensible, and yeah, at some point you need to modify Jenkins in order to keep your instances running. And yeah, actually, that's how I ended up in Jenkins core team because I just wanted to fix the stuff in Jenkins I wasn't happy about. And yeah, starting from approximately 2013, I developed Jenkins almost non-stop, and yeah, I joined CloudBees, and now there is a lot more Jenkins development. I also lead Swiss Jenkins area meetups. Who has ever heard about them? Yeah, I'm looking at my colleagues, and I have questions. Okay, so Swiss Jenkins area meetup is a kind of small meetup. It existed for maybe 2 years. I took it over last spring, and currently we organize meetups in cities, and yeah, I hope it will expand. So if you're interested in Jenkins, maybe it's a meetup group you want to be in, and yeah, I can share the links later.
Where are you based? In what location you are based?
Swiss Jenkins area meetup.
Yeah.
It's right now it's a single meetup group for the entire Switzerland. So depending on the activities, we will split. But yeah, right now it's just one meetup group for everything.
Okay.
So if you have some feedback as organizers, etc., let me know. So in my case, I speak neither French nor German. So for me, it's not relevant to have 2 meetup groups. But if somebody is interested, yeah, let's do that. Okay, Java 11. So yeah, Java 11 was released on September 25th, 2018. Actually, it was my birthday, so I remember it pretty well. And yeah, actually now there is a lot of projects which are already in process of migration from Java 8 to Java 11. And my question to you, who has already migrated to Java 11? Okay, who has considered that at least? Okay, that's already good. And who has tried Java 9 and then said no? Okay, yeah, it's really understandable, but yeah, in my talk, I want to talk about pitfalls we hit. So it's a war story. I will probably talk randomly about stuff we hit, and if you have questions about general stuff, just ask and we will discuss that. And I also present the current status and what we actually want to change else. There are already slides published, so you can just follow this link if you're interested. And yeah, they will be the same slides. It's just Google Slides. So if you go behind something, or if you want to ask a question later, just use this link. Okay, so target audience is Java developers, some hardcore Jenkins administrators, and yeah, of course, all people interested in Java. So just in case if I say something and you don't understand that, raise your hand, I'll try to explain it, because yeah, they may be quite complicated. So, okay, let's talk about Jenkins. Probably you have already seen slides like that. So Jenkins is one of the most popular CI/CD tools. Latest surveys show that Jenkins occupies maybe 60 to 65% in on-premise installations and more than 50% in cloud. So it's a widely used tool. Right now we know about more than 200,000 installations. Advantages of Jenkins: that is open source, it's extensible, it has a lot of plugins, currently more than 1,500, and especially for Java developers, if you imagine a tool, most likely there is a plugin in Jenkins. So Cobertura, Jacuco, etc. Yeah, Java is one of our focus stacks, and Jenkins itself uses Java under the hood. So there is a lot of plugins for Jenkins in this area. What we actually use? We use Java, we use Groovy, we use JT as one of our embedded frameworks, and yeah, as many Java projects, we have hundreds of different Maven dependencies. So taking plugins, etc., we depend on pretty much every standard library within Java ecosystem. Yeah, I've already talked about plugins for Java. Everything is available. And now I want to talk about Java 11. Any questions so far? Okay. So what we do with Java 11? Actually, our main objective is to support running Jenkins with Java 11 and to get packages running seamlessly on Java 8 and Java 11. So if you own a service, you can just migrate it to Java 11. But if you offer a tool, a product which is being used by a lot of people as a Word file like Jenkins, you may need to run on Java 8 for a long time. At least so far I do not see end of life of Java 8 in Jenkins. Maybe it's in several years when everything changes. And what we want to actually get incremental improvements within Jenkins from Java. So we want to get better garbage collector settings, better performance, better security fixes, etc., etc. We do not go all in Java 11, so we still work with Java 8, and it means that we cannot upgrade our code base to Java 11 because we still need to compile and debug with Java 8. We do not adopt Java models right now, the same reason. And actually, we do not do any hardcore optimizations for Java 11. Our goal is to actually get the thing running. And there is some advantages. Actually, if you take a look at Java release notes, you may notice there is a lot of different changes. But what I'm specifically interested in the project is firstly parallel full garbage collector. According to our performance tests, it gives a significant bump because some plugins like Jenkins Pipeline, JobDSL, they utilize garbage collector a lot. Because yeah, firstly they are based on Groovy, they create a lot of intermediate stuff. Another thing which is interesting to us is Epsilon garbage collector. It's a new no-op garbage collector, so effectively a thing which does nothing. But in some cases it's really reasonable. For example, we have a single-shot Jenkins Masters project. So Jenkins Master, which just runs once, executes your pipeline, reports everything to external storages, and then just dies. And for such kind of projects, and also for single-shot agents, it may be reasonable to just have garbage collector which never dies, which never does something, because it also gives you performance boost. From security standpoint, there is TLS 1.3, which is also available in Java 11. There are new cryptographic algorithms. We try to bump them periodically because we have users and customers who come and ask for something new because there is security team said that the old algorithms are no longer usable and they want to get upgrades. So it's something we do. And also there is a lot of experimental features we would like to try, but I would say that these ones are actually the main things we need. And from administrator standpoint, we also want to improve profiling performance, because when we talk about big Jenkins instances which are overloaded, attaching profiler to them usually kills the instance. And these features are really interesting. We haven't tried them, but yeah, we keep them in mind. And regarding risks. So if you have ever read about Java 11, etc., you hear about models, which is probably one of the most buzzy things, and of course we considered it as one of major risks. And there is a lot of features being deprecated and removed. I'll talk about it later. And there is a lot of incompatibilities in upstream libraries we would need to resolve, and there is a lot of issues in development tools. So these are main risks we considered when we started the project, and yeah, actually we hit every of these obstacles, and in my next talk I'll talk about that. So currently Jenkins runs only on Java 8. If you try to run on Java 10 or Java 11, it will just refuse to run until you set a special flag. And there is a reason for that, because when Java 9 was released, we had no protection from running with high versions of Java. So our users started updating their latest Docker images, etc., to Java 9. Sometimes they even didn't know about that. Everything started falling apart. And what we had to do actually to enforce checks to prevent running with Java 9 at all. Then at some point we relaxed them to enable future Java. But yeah, Java 9 was a big issue for us, even when we didn't support that. So 1 year ago at the Hackfest at Jenkins World, we did some first experiments with Java 9 support, and actually we've got a lot of data in order to understand how we proceed. And actually from what we started there, actually Jenkins itself can build Java 9 plus projects right now, because you can separate build flow and runtime. So if you run a build on agent, you can say, please use another JDK for this build. Sometimes it works, for example, in shell steps, in pipeline Maven plugin, and in other things. In some cases it doesn't work. Who does use Maven project type? Okay, so in 2011, it was publicly announced that core contributors of Maven project consider Maven project type as evil. If you're interested, I can describe why, because it has a pretty complex architecture. But yeah, one of the main things is that it has to have the same runtime with Maven. So you cannot run a Maven project plugin with a different version of Java. And it was a pain for us when we were migrating from Java 7 to Java 8, for example, because at this point there was a lot of users using Maven project plugin, and everything fell apart. Because we said we do not longer support Java 7 at some point, and people were still using this plugin, and there was a lot of requests, because migrating from Java 7 to Java 8 was actually, it's pretty trivial, but there were still some projects relying on Java JDK 7. But regarding the current state, Jenkins cannot run with Java 9. Actually, if you use Jenkins pipeline, who does use it now? Okay, more people. So Jenkins pipeline was unable to start up on Java 9 at all, because Jenkins pipeline is a Groovy interpreter. It depends on Groovy things. Groovy of the version we used wasn't supported. Then we were relying on some serialization libraries which also didn't support Java 11. So many things fell apart. Then even freestyle projects didn't work reliably, and things like process management were completely broken in both Linux and Windows. So technically it was unusable. And this is the state we started from. And what we decided to do, okay, let's organize a hackathon and maybe we will figure out what we need to fix. It was actually a good idea. It was organized by Kosuke, who is Jenkins creator, and we had a kind of 1 week online hackathon where we worked on different aspects of Java 10 at this point and some bits of Java 11 because there was already early access version available. And what we actually achieved. So we had something like 26 contributors. They created more than 100 pull requests to different components. And actually we got all the main features of Jenkins running over 1 week, including pipeline. We applied a lot of patches to development tools, and we did a lot of exploratory testing. So it was a pretty packed week for us, but at the end we were able to announce preview availability. So if you follow Jenkins.io blog posts, probably you have seen a blog post about running Jenkins with Java 11. Unfortunately, I haven't linked it here, but there is a blog post describing how to run that. And after that, Jenkins is officially in the preview mode, but we still run it from feature branches. So there was a lot of work to do after this hackathon. One of the interesting things that actually we hit a lot of obstacles, and what we decided to do is to contact OpenJDK team and to ask them about some of these obstacles, because not all of them were trivial. We had such kind of meetings, so there are meeting notes where we discussed a lot of stuff which is not trivial from Java release notes. For example, what is a recommended way to handle Java web start, or how to handle Word files. Yeah, the entire Java EE ecosystem, including Word files, is being more or less deprecated in Java nowadays, but it's still something we heavily use in Jenkins. So we needed to find a way how to migrate our existing code base and approaches to Java 11. And yeah, then starting from June, there was a lot of activities like, yeah, there was preview availability. We started Jenkins JEP. So don't be confused. JEP here is Jenkins enhancement proposal. But unfortunately, we have this problem everywhere. We had Jenkins user groups, etc. So yeah, there is some collision, especially for the talk like that. Effectively, Jenkins JEPs is a new process we introduced more than 1 year ago. It's yeah, it has the same purpose as JEPs in Java. Discuss major architecture changes, get them publicly reviewed and publicly accepted. So it's a kind of public process for Jenkins architecture changes, and we do a lot of changes now, so it was really helpful to the community. And yeah, we have the same JEP for Java 11 support. And actually, Jenkins runs well on Java 11 release candidates, so we had another hackathon in September in order to bump to Java 11. We discovered several regressions being compared to what we experienced in June, because yeah, Java 11 also got updated, and in RC there were some changes which broke, for example, update flows, because there was a different procedure for certificate checks. So some low-level thing, but yeah, we had to update. And by this time, all known fixes to the core were actually upstreamed. So if you run a recent Jenkins weekly version, you can potentially run with Java 11. But if you use pipeline, for example, it won't work, because pipeline also needs some patches. I'll talk about it later. But yeah, currently we are more or less confident that Jenkins itself can run with Java 11. It executed a lot of tests, and we ran a lot of integration tests to verify that. So we are good, but there is still some time before it gets publicly announced. So currently we are here because yeah, we still want to announce preview in weekly, get some testing, then get general availability in weekly, and also announce that, maybe get some online hackfests / test fests as well. So in order to get more feedback, because 1500 plugins, nobody can really test that in a feasible time, and eventually we want to go to GA in LTS. So the ETA maybe February 2018. By this time we will already have Java 12. But yeah, our main goal is to have Java 11 running, and Java 12 is a separate story we also think about right now. So this is our current plan, and yeah, my main objective today is to actually talk what we hit during this project. If you want to try, here's a vanilla image. So you may see that there is another Jenkins/Jenkins experimental image. While we do that, we have continuous delivery set up. So each change we do in core and in plugins, so they get automatically propagated. So we have a shorter delivery cycle, and we don't need to wait for weeklies and sometimes even for commits to be merged. There was already a question about Blue Ocean. So if you want to try Blue Ocean, it's here. As I said before, Jenkins pipeline doesn't work out of the box. We still need releases. But in this image, everything is integrated. So if you use pipeline, you just take this image and it gets running. And if you want to find more information about these images, actually there is a blog post. All these images extend standard images. So if you use plugins.txt, if you use Groovy hooks or build your own Docker images, you can get them there. If you want, I can show you a short demo, but disclaimer, it will be probably the most boring demo in the world because it's just Jenkins running on Java 11 and nothing fails. But yeah. So what may be interesting for Jenkins users? Is it big enough? Okay, I have a project called demo Jenkins config as code. So effectively, it's a fully so it's a statically configured instance which uses Groovy hooks, which uses the new configuration as code plugin, and which embeds a lot of configurations. So this instance just starts off the box with a lot of configurations, and yeah, of course, it's packaged as Docker. So I have a make run command, but effectively make run just runs Docker. So you may see that there is something latest JDK 11 running. Effectively, there is a lot of stuff inside, and if you're interested, I can talk more about what's inside later. Okay. So we have plugins starting, and then at some point you may see that there are some log messages like configuring users, configuring projects, etc. It's configuration as code. So everything is embedded in this image, and yeah, completed initialization. So now we can go not here, I believe. Okay, let's go to our Jenkins instance. Localhost 8080. So Jenkins. Okay. That it's not something I expected. Usually I do it in 2 attempts. Okay. Let's see, because yeah, it's something really strange. Maybe it's whatever. Oh, yeah, we have a bug with Firefox in newer weekly versions. So yeah, probably I hit that. So here I'm on the bleeding edge. So if I use Chrome, okay, everything works fine. There is a pull request for that, don't worry. Okay, I just rebuilt the demo before the meeting, I believe. So what we get in this demo? We have Jenkins, we have a lot of pre-configured job. As I said, it uses Docker heavily inside. And effectively, this demo represents Jenkins CI Jenkins IO instance. We built Jenkins with Jenkins, of course. And yeah, there is a lot of development tools, and we can just run whatever random build. I'm not sure whether it builds, but what I wanted to show you, that actually this demo runs on Java 11 right now. So it's a standard OpenJDK image. It's a bit behind as far, yeah, it's 38 release already, I believe. But yeah, so let's see what happens with our job. And I believe that our job cannot start because we still need Docker daemon in order to avoid Docker problem. So since my master runs in Docker and my build needs to provision agents, I need to hack something. And, yeah. Okay, so this is a demo, and okay. Yeah, I believe this, yeah, this is it. So effectively, I start another container which does forwarding of my ports, and after that, yeah, this Docker instance, yeah, it started a new container. So there will be Jenkins instance running. Okay. Yes, here, so we started executing something. So it has pipeline, it has maybe 100 plugins already in this instance. It will execute the build, then it will run tests, publish JUnit results, publish find bugs, and all other classic things. So Jenkins plugins essentially are just Maven projects mostly. So it does all the common stuff. And while it runs, yeah. So yeah, same Jenkins, but on Java 11. I'll let it run. Maybe it completes, maybe not. And yeah, any questions so far? Okay. So if you want to know how this configuration as code thing works, I can show it a bit later. Okay. Obstacles we hit. What is your idea? How much time did we spend on Java 11 support so far?
Once.
A bit more. Well, if we start calculating in man-months, like some managers do, maybe it will be a bit more because there was a lot of contributors, etc. But yeah. But generally, it wasn't that difficult. It's still a big project, but it was parallelized across multiple people, and effectively, the most of the things we just did in 1 week. So we've got all the major things running relatively quickly. Then there was a lot of legwork in order to get all patches upstreamed, because you know, when you submit pull requests, then you wait, and yeah, sometimes it takes a while. Let's talk about obstacles. So yeah, Jenkins is one of the biggest JVM-based projects and ecosystem in the world. So if we just take main Jenkins repositories, there are more than 2,000 repositories, more than 1,500 plugins. We have our own development tools. We have inherited some components. For example, there is Trilite SSH library, which is one of SSH clients written in Java. And effectively, Jenkins maintains the only alive branch of it. Yeah, probably we would be happy to not maintain that, but effectively there is a lot of such adopted things in Jenkins organization, and this organization still evolves. So we get more and more contributions each month. We get more unique contributors with each quarter. So Jenkins project expands, and yeah, it's a pretty old project. So who has ever worked with projects which are more than 10 years old? Okay. So if you know what is legacy, yeah, Jenkins is actually legacy. If we talk about the project, it's a pretty successful legacy thing, but de facto the project started in 2004 or 2005, depending on what we calculate. The most of architecture was created before 2008, and in this point there was no Spring Boot, so we have our own implementation of Spring Boot. There was no Spring security, so we use libraries which existed before, etc., etc. So there are many components in Jenkins which are quite legacy, and the problem that Jenkins as a project, we heavily rely on our ecosystem, and we have a good track of backward compatibility. So yeah.
I recently read there was an initiative trying to rewrite everything from scratch. Did I read wrong?
Jenkins X probably?
Yeah, something like that.
Jenkins X isn't rewrite of everything from scratch. Jenkins X is a new project. It's an opinionated version of Jenkins, which is a continuous delivery of applications in Kubernetes, but internally it still uses Jenkins.
Okay.
Currently, Jenkins X can run in two modes. One is classic one, which is more or less standard Jenkins, but with some Kubernetes flavor. And another one is Jenkins X serverless, where then there is no continuously existing Jenkins master. As I said before, there are single shot masters. So effectively, Jenkins X serverless is a single shot master. And if you want, I can also show it later. So Jenkins, it's not only Jenkins distribution as we used to think before. yes, there is Jenkins X, there is Jenkins Evergreen, which is an attempt to get a connected instance which would be self-updating and self-reverting. There are multiple other projects existing in Jenkins, so there are sub-projects in Jenkins, and there is a lot of them. So when we say Jenkins, we mostly say Jenkins core, and how you use that, it depends on your use cases. But yeah, still Jenkins is a big ecosystem, and obviously these sub-projects do not make it easy, because yeah, if we take about Jenkins X, etc., they all have custom packaging, they all have custom logic, a lot of hooks, so yeah, the project gets complicated. So what we have inside, as I said, in-house libraries. We have a quite unique thing for Java world, which is called executable Word file. So Word file is a package for web containers, but if you apply some hooks to this Word file, you actually can make it executable as well. So this is what we have in Jenkins, and the most of you probably run Jenkins as a java-jar Jenkins Word file. Who does run it like that? And what do others do? Tomcat, Wildfly, whatever. Okay.
No, probably you.
No clue.
Okay.
Each works.
Yeah. Yeah, no clue is probably a good answer, because if you use Docker, etc., it just works. Yeah, it uses Jetty inside in this case, but yeah, generally Jenkins can do a lot. One of the historical things we have to know about that Jenkins is actually like that, because if we talk about 2008, probably you've heard about things like Jelly, which is a web framework. Then there is Jetty, which is a web container to be used. Jetty is perfectly fine, it's an active project, but yeah, sometimes there are difficulties with that. And we have maintain external web containers. So for example, now if you're developing something in 2018, I would likely say one web container is probably enough. Well, yeah, actually Jenkins runs in dozens of different web containers nowadays. So there is some custom logic, for example, XML tweaks embedded. And if we talk about Java 11 update, everything hits us, because yeah, whatever issue we have with web container hits us as well. Then we have Groovy-based web layout rendering, because at some point people thought that Jelly is like you put Java into XML, then you get Jelly. So yeah, it's fine. It works. It's really fast, but yeah, not everybody likes that. So we also have Groovy, and we have some other frameworks. For example, Stepler is a kind of request routing framework. So you get a request, and it magically becomes a request, a Java request for whatever method with some checks, etc. So this is Stepler. It's a magic thing which somehow glues form requests, REST APIs, etc. to Java objects. I know only about 3 projects which use Stepler, and 2 of them are within Jenkins governance. So yeah, it's also a kind of technical debt. Right now, Jenkins project migrates to JavaScript, to proper REST APIs, so that we can decouple the stuff. And actually, there is a new project, Shifting Gears. Probably it's what you're referencing about the rewrite. So Shifting Gears is an attempt to actually change Jenkins architecture, because yeah, the problem that yeah, we are here, architecturally 2008, maybe a bit more, Jenkins runs perfectly, but in order to get here, we need to invest a lot of effort. So there is Cloud Native Jenkins announced in this blog post. It's a kind of I would say it's not Jenkins, it's a new flavor of Jenkins. So there will be still Jenkins 2 and Cloud Native Jenkins existing in parallel. But there is also a lot of architecture changes which intend to update it. For example, at every conference, people ask, why do you still keep XMLs in Jenkins home? Why don't you use database and some other things? So this is architecture changes, and there are special interest groups which focus on these areas. But yeah, Jenkins is not stuck in terms of architecture, so whatever I told before, it also changes. But we want to actually have Java 11 support now with the current architecture. And yeah, how does generally Jenkins look? We have Jenkins master. Jenkins master depends on some libraries, and we also have plugins. Plugins depend on Jenkins core. They transitively depend on these libraries. They also can include their own dependencies. And then we have other plugins which may depend on other plugins, etc., etc. And of course, there may be open source plugins, private source plugins. So this ecosystem expands here pretty far. So the longest dependency chain I've seen is 20 plugins. So 20 plugins depending on each other. Yeah, it's a kind of Russian doll, but yeah, it works. So nobody cares. But yeah, there are over 9,000 dependencies, and it's true. It's more than 9,000 dependencies in Jenkins project. Because, yeah, for example, if you take Jacoco plugin, most probably it includes Jacoco libraries. We take Maven plugin, it includes a whole chunk of Maven, actually Maven itself. And there is a lot of such plugins which actually pull in a lot of stuff inside Jenkins. And if you work with Java, then you know about dependency hell. So it's pretty similar to RPM hell, to Node.js hell, yeah, whatever. If you have a dependency management system, you have some hell. So nothing really changes in Jenkins. We have hell on the Java level, on the library level, also sometimes on the plugin level to make it more fun. And of course, there is a lot of low-level logic, for example, JNA, Java Melody, etc. There are plugins like File Leak Detector, which self-install Java agents within the runtime. So yeah, there is a lot of crappy stuff happening there. And yeah, there is no class isolation generally in Jenkins. So there is a lot of risks of binary conflicts. And when we talk about major upgrades, so when we upgrade from Java 8 to Java 11, many libraries require major update, because 2008 some libraries didn't get update for years because they were just working. If there is no security releases, most probably nobody updates them. So yeah, there is a lot of such historical stuff and technical debt we need to clean up, and yeah, it hits jar hell. So if you need to update one library which is used in 10 plugins, and this is a major update, it becomes a major pain. We have some opportunities to resolve that, but yeah, generally it's painful. And yeah, long tail of plugins, because as in many organizations, if you have 1,500 components and maybe 400 active contributors, most likely not everything is maintained well. The same applies to Jenkins. We already hit it this year. Probably you've heard about JEP-211. It's enforcing of whitelisting for class deserialization in Java. So for example, when you send classes from agents to master, or from or when you load classes from XML. Yes, we store classes in XML sometimes because yeah, it's easy. So there is a lot of stuff falling apart. Regarding meaningful things, if you ever update your development tool or your library or your project to Java 11, most probably you will hit ASM upgrade, because ASM is a kind of kernel thing. It's been used everywhere when you need some bytecode manipulations. And ASM 5 is not compatible with Java 9 going forward. Now, currently, there is work on ASM 7 as far as I know, but yeah, ASM 6 is generally enough for us. Then for us is, of course, Jetty, it's Groovy, because we need to bump the stuff there. And JBoss marshalling. Who does know about that? Okay, this is good, because JBoss marshalling is a separate thing we use, and we hit issues there. And of course, all libraries we use, sometimes they have issues. For example, illegal reflective access, which is just everywhere in Java ecosystem. It became a problem starting from Java 9. Who is interested in ASM upgrade? If no, I will just skip the slides, because we can spend time on more interesting things for you. Okay, skipping that, Groovy. So Groovy is probably, who does use Groovy? Okay, who have already migrated to Groovy 3? Okay, nobody. And we also haven't migrated to Groovy 3 because it's a major release. It sounds frightening. We haven't even tested that. But what we did, we actually had a kind of minor upgrade within Groovy versions in order to pick Java 9 compatibility fixes, and effectively it allowed to run on Groovy within Jenkins. And we use Groovy heavily. So, for example, there is a lot of plugins which offer Groovy steps. There is Script Console which uses Groovy. Pipeline also uses Groovy, but also is only as a definition language, so it doesn't use Groovy execution engine internally. And yeah, there are things like script security, etc., which do pretty crappy things within Groovy IST trees. So we have to address that. And yeah, this update helped, but one of the issues you should be aware about that there are memory leaks, etc. So if you just update your application, most likely you will need to update dependencies as well, because a lot of stuff just falls apart even if it's a 30-digit upgrade. So in Jenkins, each time we upgrade Groovy, we have something like 1 or 2 weeks of testing on special instances, because yeah, it's just not reliable in our use cases. JBoss Marshnet, nobody uses that. Let's just skip that, I believe. Yeah, Java models. Who does know what is Java model is?
Does know or doesn't know?
Does know. Okay, so Java model is a new abstraction layer introduced starting from Java 9. So effectively, before that, you just had Java, and you had core Java libraries. Now they were detached to models, and there is a lot of features introduced, like restrictions of APIs, etc., between models, some bits of permission controls. Some models get deprecated, and actually it's one of the most widely discussed features within those who try to upgrade to Java versions. And actually we expected that it's going to be difficult. And the reality that actually it wasn't that difficult, because so if you have ever tried JDK 11 early access, most probably it fell apart because of models. But now there are two options. So when you upgrade, you can either adopt the model ecosystem, or you can just say, let's run as is, and keep your fingers crossed that nothing falls apart. And actually, it's exactly what we did in Jenkins, because yeah, updating 1,500 plugins, yeah, there are some advantages in models, for example, plugin isolation, etc., but it's just a huge chunk of work. So in our case, we just upgrade, and we hit some issues. So for example, class loading changes in Java 9 Plus. There is a site created by Nikolai Parlok, which actually describes class loading. So who does play with class loaders on your instances? Okay, probably we should skip it as well, because it won't impact you, unless whatever library you use does something like that. And if you run a query within GitHub, you actually may discover a lot of these cases. So maybe it still impacts you. So the problem that in Java 9 and going forward, some models and some components became invisible to the default platform class loader, and we have some plugins affected by that. For example, there is SOAP model. I'm not sure what it was doing inside the Java for starters, but it's JavaX. So for JavaX, there is just no guaranteed compatibility in many cases. And one of popular examples is find bugs annotations, which was kind of, yeah, it was inside Java, but it wasn't inside Java for a long time. There were open issues, for example, with regards to license, etc. So many people had to use external libraries, and there are dozens of them. What is actually not longer visible in default class loader? So there is a lot of components there, and how to discover these components? If Oracle decided to remove a particular model or to deprecate that, most likely it's not visible in the default class loader, and this what hits you if you upgrade, even if you don't use models in Java 11. In our case, just some plugins stopped working. About Java XML bind, I will probably talk later. But yeah, it's still a problem, and you have to keep it in mind.
So
Yep.
do you mean if my application depends on one of those libraries, or if one of my plugins depends on one of those.
Yeah, you may get into issues.
Is it about my application or my plugins?
If you migrate your application to Java 11, you may hit the same issues. So objective of this talk, I just talk about issues which we hit and which others hit, so that it's not an issue only for Jenkins project. But if you migrate your own applications, most likely you will hit it as well in some cases. Depends on the project complexity, of course. For your projects, maybe the main problem is dependencies, because everybody of us uses a lot of dependencies, and we never know what's inside them. And if you don't keep your dependencies up to date, for example, it's a common case, especially in enterprise, you never know what breaks there. So JEP is one of these examples, and actually this example hit people hard, not on the Jenkins project, because JEP is Java XML bind. If you use any kinds of data binding logic, most likely your code depends on JEP, or even due to historical reasons, some components, for example, certificate checks, etc., they also come from JEP due to whatever reason. Because some people just decided that it's the best import which they were able to find on Stack Overflow or whatever. There is a lot of issues about that right now, and actually it's widely used in plugins as well. So if you want, I just launch the query. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's just a kind of random example. So there are something like 700 results within Jenkins organization, and some of them are just whatever XML data access attributes, because Jenkins does persistence of configurations in XML, so you need to somehow map configuration classes to the disk, so that most likely you have XML binding. In our case, it's Extreme library, but there are other such libraries like JBoss remoting. And yeah, there is a lot of plugins. And actually, we had dependencies within Jenkins core as well, because yeah, we had this encryption and certificate check problem. We had some components which were just using JEP dependencies to generate certificates. And what is the problem? So if you just run with Java 9, in Java 9 you have special command line arguments which allow to set that I want to use a particular model. So nothing was really removed there. If something breaks, you just declare model dependency, and then everything starts magically working. But in Java 11, they started removing these models from Java distribution. So it means that if the model is missing, yes, it's missing. Your runtime will fail, you will get class loading exceptions, and there is no way to work around that unless you do something different. So for example, for JEP, when we had a discussion with Jigsaw project representatives, they said that if you use JEP, JEP was just unable to follow the new pace of Java, and they were quite behind, so they decided to split their ways. So now the JEP still exists, it's maintained, but it's not within part of Java. You can download libraries and then set up a command line like that. So what we do here, we still define models. So it's Java XML bind and also Java activation, which is a separate model, which is a dependency for JEP. You have need to have them both. So then you add them to class pass, and then, for example, here you can run Jenkins with Java 11, but you still need to download these components. If you use packaging, for example, Docker or something like that, it's not a problem because it can be packaged internally. But if we talk about running Word files, then yeah, you have to handle, his Jenkins Word file. Then you have to handle everything on your own. And it becomes a real problem because there is some models removed from Java 11. Not everything from here was removed, but JEP is one of the examples. And actually, what we were discussing with OpenJDK Jigsaw team, that since we have Word files, Why nobody expected this use case? Java XML bind is generally a part of Java EE, which is being decoupled. But yeah, our file is self-runnable. So when you run Jenkins inside a web container like Apache Tomcat or whatever, most likely there will be a JAX-B in parent class loader, and it's not a problem. For us, it was a real problem because we don't have all these classes. And the obvious question was, what if there were multi-release WAR files? So in Java, there are multi-release jar files. So this is a new engine introduced also in Java 9. So you can define standard classes for Java 8, and then you can set up additional folder in your jar file where you put classes specially compiled for Java 9, Java 10, etc. And this magic works because JDK 8 just doesn't know about these classes and it ignores them, and newer Java versions know how to load that and they can replace the classes. So for example, in some cases you can get more efficient implementation for Java 11 and you can retain compatibility. The problem that there is no such engine for multi-release WAR files, because nobody expected this case to exist, but actually Jenkins isn't the only project which does that. And our plan is to either support it on our own or maybe just detach the thing to a plugin, which is a pain because we have the class loader issue I've mentioned above. So if you just detach Jenkins to this code to a plugin, yes, you have Jenkins class loaders, but it doesn't come from the root class loader, so some things break. And last option we have is just to bundle JAX-B internally, but it's complicated. And one of the models, which I hope you do not use in 2018, is Corba. Just in case. Does anybody use that? Okay, and thanks God we do not use it in Jenkins as well. But the problem is some historical reasons. So probably you've seen blog posts from Foxglove Security. They announced class deserialization attacks against several web containers and also against Jenkins. And effectively, the idea is simple. There is a read resolve method, and if you can pass something weird in this read resolve, probably you can send a class over the channel, and then you get remote code execution. So Jenkins was also affected by that. We fixed that, and since that we have tests. And unfortunately, Corba was one of these models. So we don't have Corba in production code, as far as I know. You can never tell because there are 1,500 plugins. Not all of them are hosted within Jenkins CI organization due to historical reasons. So I hope we won't be affected. But we still need to run tests which include models which were removed from Java 11. And actually, JAX-B is another such case. And there is no multi-release jar files because actually they are expected to work in opposite way. So the class exists for JDK 8 but doesn't exist for Java 9, for example. And there is no such engine offered by Java. So if you have a test which requires a removed component, then there is just no way to keep it as is. You have to exploit something, and one of the features I discovered in Maven actually, that you can pass models in profiles. Who does use Maven? And others use Gradle, SBT, or whatever. So I have no idea whether it's available in Gradle. I believe so, because Gradle is scripted. In the case of Maven, you actually can define a multi-model project, and you can include a model as optional model within the profile. And I didn't know that this construct works, but apparently it does. So what we did in our projects, we just decoupled all the components which depend on removed components to a separate model. It helps. It still limits usability because if you try to build this project with JDK 11, it will be skipped. But there are still so IDE isn't really ready to this construct, and if you try to debug the components or build the entire project, sometimes it fails. But at least we've got workarounds, so with that we can build our projects, and we still can retain our security tests, which, as you may imagine, are critical to Jenkins because we don't want to lose any of security test automation. Regarding real adoption, so what we did here is actually not a real adoption at all because we didn't really use models. We just make the things running out of the box. There are lots of things we want to do, like plugin isolation, class logic isolation. So we don't have this jar hell anymore eventually. Just models do not solve that, but yeah, it would be a step forward. And yeah, we postponed this change. Probably Cloud Native Jenkins, rewrite it or not, will resolve this problem in another way. Because yeah, it's tough to upgrade. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, this topic you will definitely hit. It's illegal reflective access. It's another JEP-211. So the idea was that reflection in Java is generally dangerous, and set accessible is one of the most dangerous operations because somebody decided that a field or class is private, and then you say that no, it's not private, we just modified it. So no compatibility guaranteed, of course. But the problem that some JVM-based languages, for example Groovy, just exploit these things out of the box because yeah, Groovy doesn't care about private fields, etc. If you want, you can access them. And actually, this set accessible true is just everywhere. So in Jenkins itself, it's something like 200 dependencies, mostly reflection, access to particular classes, including JVM internal classes, and many things break. And actually, when there was Java 9 early access, so originally it was illegal reflective access was prohibited by default, and effectively it led to the fact that the most of Java applications were just failing immediately because yeah, it's everywhere in libraries. Whatever you use, in the case of Jenkins, it was just one of the first 100 commands in the bytecode. It was illegal reflective access enablement to some code, and it applies to many libraries. So there was a lot of discussions, and finally it was decided that this illegal reflective access won't be enforced anymore. So final release of Java 9 permitted that. It just prints one warning on the start tab. This warning is probably a bit annoying, but it doesn't break anything, so it just works. And yeah, if we run the query in GitHub, yeah, probably I shouldn't, but yeah, it's like before, a lot of components. And yeah, it's just a Jenkins project, so 270 dependencies. So some of them are in tests, because tests also need to do some reflection, but there is still about 100 of real operations. And some of them, like here, for example, they happen in a reflections Java. So fortunately, this is a test here. But the point I'm trying to make that there is a lot of libraries which just rely on reflection by default. And they rely on set accessible by default. So most likely it will fail. I can provide examples of these libraries, but just go to your favorite library, run query in GitHub, and most likely you will see this operand because, yeah, it's everywhere. And actually, what we decided in our project that yeah, it's an uphill battle. We cannot fix it even in Jenkins properly, because some fixes imply serious API changes, because some plugins tend to bypass Jenkins APIs and talk to Jenkins core directly, which is not permitted, but sometimes it's hard to change that because plugins are not maintained. There is a lot of upstream dependencies like security libraries, etc. They also use illegal reflective access, object serialization frameworks. All of them are about this illegal reflective access because that's how they work. And yeah, it breaks. So if you don't want to spend time on that, and to be honest, it would be my recommendation, you can just set this flag. And we talked to Jigsaw team, and they said that in the near future, they do not plan to enforce legal reflective access because they do not know how to really handle that. In our case, we still print the warnings so that we know what happens, and we invite contributors to fix that. But it's a kind of uphill battle. So the code becomes better. A lot of stuff comes from technical debt because there is some code created for Java 4 in Jenkins, which probably should be rewritten at some point. But it happens. Who does use Java Web Start? Okay, probably I should skip it as well. But Java Web Start is one of the features removed in Java 11. There are also JEPs, etc. One relevance to Jenkins is this button.
So, do you fix it?
Huh?
You remove it?
So the problem that there is no way to fix it. Because firstly, there is no industry standard replacement. So Java Web Start is just removed. There is no replacement offered. There are some projects which do something, but I'm not sure that it makes sense to fix that. So what we plan to do, we added some logic in JList so that this button appears only when you run with Java 8 actually now. And for the rest, we update documentation, web UI, and as usually in open source projects, invite contributors to contribute if they want to get this feature back. Because we see no way to do that, but somebody may be able to do that. And actually, Java Web Start nowadays is part of Jenkins core. And it causes other projects like static analysis checks. Some bits just do not compile, so we will be detaching it to a plugin, but so far it's not done. So it's still a part of the Jenkins core. Actually, Jenkins core still includes a lot of stuff. We continuously detach that, but there is still a lot of historical things there. Okay, packaging. Probably you do not use Java 11, but I believe many of you use Docker, right? Who still doesn't use Docker here?
I don't.
Okay, who has already migrated to Kubernetes? Okay, we also tried that, but the fact the most of our infrastructure is still around Docker nowadays. Why? Because Docker is really developer friendly, so you just write a simple file and then it magically runs inside a container and everything is easy. If you try to install Kubernetes on a local machine, it will be achievement unlocked when you get it running, but it takes longer than to actually just run Docker. So in Jenkins project, of course, we use Docker heavily. So there are dozens of plugins for Docker within Jenkins. We also offer official packaging like Jenkins GLP agent. So slaves were named to agents to Jenkins 2.0. There are still everywhere. So it happens. But one of the issues with these Docker images, that these Docker images include Java by default, because that's how they work. So it means that if you want to migrate to Java 11, you also need to somehow get this Java 11 support there. And our users need that in order to try it out. Actually, Docker is not the only packaging in Jenkins which includes Java. We still have a Windows Jenkins installer. MSA package. It still includes Java internally. But it's a separate story. We will probably just rework that. But this part is really important, and actually whomever uses Java in Docker most probably use this image, or at least start with this image. So this image is official repository for OpenJDK, and actually there is one issue here because it's official, but it's official for Docker Inc. It's not official for OpenJDK project. It's not official for Oracle. It's not official for whomever maintains OpenJDK. And it lags behind releases, especially for early access. It's something like 1 month behind usually. Maybe it's getting better, but even for common releases, it takes a while to get released. Then there is no multi-platform support. In Jenkins Platform Seek, we are working on native Jenkins runs on ARM and other components. Actually, Jenkins already runs there, but we need packaging. And this is also a problem for us. And as well, there is an open question about 2019. because in 2019, in January 2019, there will be end of life of OpenJDK packages shipped by Oracle in open source. So it's still not 100% clear what it means, what people do interpret now. So if you use Oracle JDK, I mean hotspot, etc., it's not longer free and just don't use it. If you use OpenJDK packages, there are still some concerns, and there is no explicit guarantee that these packages will be shipped after the end of life. Most probably they will pin it at some point, and it means that once there is a security release, all Oracle customers get the security release, fine, but about OpenJDK, maybe yes, maybe no. There is no explicit commitment. And there is no explicit commitment for these images, because it also implies some potential licenses, licensing issues, etc. And actually, when we were talking with Jigsaw team, they said that just don't use them. And actually, there is even more justification. For example, if you take a look at security scans, officially published by Docker Hub, you will find some warnings there. So it's official image with official security defects on official Docker Hub. If you use these images, you probably accept that. Actually, there are not so many real defects, but still. There are multiple approaches. So the approach recommended by Jigsaw team that you just build OpenJDK on your own. So you take sources, there are security fixes, and then you build them. Building OpenJDK isn't a problem. The problem is with testing OpenJDK, because probably you don't have enough infrastructure, you don't want to do it on the regular basis, and I believe there are not so many OpenJDK developers in this room, so it's quite tricky. What we consider actually, OpenJDK, probably we could build that. It's still you live only once, because we don't have enough environment to test it everywhere. There are some projects which address this concern. So, for example, there is new not new, but now it's quite popular, Adopt OpenJDK project. Then there are some enterprise vendors like Red Hat who committed to maintain OpenJDK 8 going forward and keep it publicly available, and they also ship Docker images. But for example, if you take Red Hat, in the case of Jenkins project, we need Linux and Windows. Surprisingly, Red Hat doesn't ship supported version of OpenJDK for Windows. Wonder why? We need a better solution. So most likely we'll go with OpenJDK, but it's still TBD. Who has already hit this issue?
But there is not also something from Amazon, Serveto, Morbeto, I don't know what.
Yeah. So there is actually a lot of these packages. If you're a big company like Amazon, probably build OpenJDK is the way to go, because you can maintain that on your own. If you're an open source project, maybe not tiny open source project, Jenkins is definitely not tiny, but we barely have resources to do it on our own. And for small open source projects, for small companies,
No, but Amazon makes it available, just like SAP and
they do.
With the security updates?
That's the issue right now. It's nobody knows. But I saw today that it seems that Amazon is providing something. Again, SAP is also providing something.
Right. With security update, the plan for 2 or 3 years.
So basically, the Docker repository is no longer the way to go, because it's...
Nobody knows, because since it's not maintained by OpenJDK team or whatever team, there is still no official position about that. There is a ticket created to Docker community repository. If you have ever created a ticket to Docker, you may know that it sometimes takes for a while to get response. So regarding that, we are not sure. And we're about migrating out of these images anyway, so this one was just one of another justifications. And there is a lot of distributions. So if you use only one platform in your service or in your product, you're on the safe side. In the case of Jenkins, we just run on many platforms, so it's a bit more complicated for us. That's why I listed Adopt OpenJDK there, because it's a kind of alliance of different companies, and they offer multi-platform builds now. So for us, it seems to be more promising, but so far we haven't tried that. So let's see what future brings. And one of the issues you should know about: who does build Docker packages on Docker Hub? There is a feature called automatic build. We actually do that. We have our own CI infrastructure, but sometimes it's easier to just create GitHub repository, put Docker file there, and then configure Docker Hub, so it automatically builds it for you. And obviously, you don't pay for resources as well, which is good. The problem that there are significant restrictions in Docker Hub, which are reasonable, taking that it's a service and it's not designed to just build everything in the world for free, of course. So they expect Docker file to be located somewhere, but firstly it has to be named Docker file. In the most cases it's stored in the root, and in the most cases people manage the things by branches. So for example, if you need a classic image and the image for Alpine, then you create two branches and somehow merge them. But then if you need Java 11 support, then now you have three branches. You would like to have JDK 11 Alpine, but speaking of this image, there is no JDK 11 package for Alpine.
But you can specify the path of your Docker file.
Yeah, you can specify the path. But in such case, you would have to separate build and packaging. So for example, what we do in our repository is that we build a project. So there is some Java code and there is Docker file, and we use multi-stage build in order to produce that. And in such case, there is no way, because if you move a Docker file to another folder, then source code root also changes. And this is, there is no alternative for us, so we either do branches or redesign all our stuff, which we will have to do eventually, but yeah, it takes a while to get there. Okay, development tools. I believe everybody develops here, and yeah, who has already tried building something with JDK 11 or JDK 9 for starters? Okay, usually it's not needed, because if you are able to test with Java 11, probably you do not need to build with Java 11, because yeah, you just get OpenJDK 8, build that, and then somehow ship binaries and test them. But in some cases, actually building and testing is pretty much the same. So, for example, if you want to debug with Java 11 to find out a problem, you have to build with Java 11. Or at least you need your IDE to support this debugging somehow. In IDE it doesn't quite work for me. Then there is no separation in development tools. Probably it's a Jenkins specific issue, but some development tools assume that you build and test with the same version. So we have a lot of test frameworks which made it as an assumption. Of course they can be revoked, but it takes a while. And no surprise, when you run with OpenJDK 11 first time, everything just blows up. Yeah, it's how it works. So effectively, we had to update maybe 20 or 30 Maven plugins. Actually, when we started working on June 2018, Maven plugins just started adopting Java 11. And for example, Maven compiler plugin, it didn't support multi-release jars till August of this year. So when there was early access, it wasn't possible to build your application if you're relying on any library with multi-release jar, which was a pain. And there is a lot of tools, mostly around static analysis, because they also use ASM and other such components. So animal sniffer, enforcer, all rules, annotation indexers, also code coverage plugins. And actually the list is pretty long. Everything fell apart. And yeah, it took a while to just assemble this stuff. And of course, as any big project, we also have our own development tools, our own Maven plugins, our own test frameworks, and we had to update them as well. So, yeah. Who does have at least one personal Maven plugin? Gradle plugin?
I tend not to do that.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably better not to do that, but sometimes you have to. If you have a system of 1,500 plugins, you want to make life of your developers and contributors easier. So we have our own Maven plugins like Maven HPI Run, which just starts Jenkins in a single command for development. There are some packaging for plugins. There is also some attempts to create a Jenkins-specific static analysis, etc. And it's a pretty big ecosystem. And also test frameworks like functional tests is largely based on JUnit. JUnit was actually pretty fine with Java 11 out of the box, so version 4.12 worked out of the box. I believe JUnit 5 works as well. We haven't updated yet. Then we have our own web UI testing framework. Actually, it's based on Selenium internally, so it's not a kind of our own solution, but yeah.
Any issue with the Mockito or any assert?
Yes.
Assert, okay.
Yeah, Mockito.
Okay.
Yeah, no wonder. Actually, when we were working on that in June, we hit issues with both Mockito and PowerMock. For one of these frameworks, we submitted our own patch, and it was integrated because it was the most straightforward way for us. Then, yeah, they also use Awesome, and yeah, we had to work with upstream projects a lot because, yeah, there is, yeah, if you use Maven ecosystem, a lot of Maven ecosystem is now within Apache, and not all of this Apache ecosystem is now well maintained. So there was a tweet maybe 1 week ago that there are 10 active Maven developers or so, and yeah, they maintain this huge ecosystem of plugins, so they lag behind, and if you adopt new Java, especially Java 12, then yeah, you will probably have to work with these libraries and wait for fixes. So, yeah, Mockito is a problem. Find bugs. Who has already migrated to spot bugs, by the way? Okay, so the most of people are still on find bugs, or maybe something else.
SonarQube?
Yeah, SonarQube also makes sense, but yeah, SonarQube internally it uses findbugs rules as well. But yeah, we don't care until we try to analyze Java 11 application with that. I'm not sure how it works for Sonar, to be honest. So findbugs didn't quite work. So actually it worked, but with some exceptions. And yeah, since findbugs is not really maintained right now, there is no expectation that somebody fixes that. So in our case, this patch was actually enough. So we had two issues: one, whatever random findbugs internal failure; another one is just failing rule. But effectively, when we disabled one detector, everything started working fine. So we just added it to findbugs excludes, and magically everything started working.
That thing won't work even with spot bugs. I have the same issue.
Okay.
So yeah, expect to fight a lot with this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, findbugs has several modes of detectors. Some of them work with bytecode directly, and yeah, no wonder something breaks. Actually, what we expected that once we migrate to spotbugs 3.18, this is okay. Yeah. So, okay, then we will just keep this exception. Well, no worries. Yeah. So, if you use findbugs, spotbugs is definitely a way to go because yeah, this is active project. They redesigned the architecture. So original findbugs codebase, I created a lot of findbugs detectors, but yeah, the findbugs code is a hell. In spotbugs, they try to rework that, and I wish them a good luck. But yeah, it takes a while. So current spotbug codebase is still really complicated. Java doc. So Java doc doesn't really depend on Java 11. We don't have any Java 11 constructs, so we expected it to work well, and actually it works well on my machine. But unfortunately, it doesn't work well on our CI system. Due to whatever reason, there is a stack trace which clearly suggests that it's actually something within OpenJDK. We submitted an issue for that, no resolution so far. So yeah, our solution was, okay, we generate Java doc with OpenJDK 8, it's fine for us, which is reasonable. Another tool, which we actually use is Jenkins on Jenkins. Yeah, because we use Jenkins for everything, and we built on Jenkins. And good news that if you run on Java 8, you still can build with JDK 11. So our instance doesn't have any patches to run with Java 11, but we do all our test automation on this instance so far. So if you want, you can do that. So what we did, actually, we updated our pipeline libraries in order to support testing with Java 8 and Java 11. We are all in pipeline right now. So we had to modify that. It doubles test execution cost sometimes, but it's something we go with because we need to get better feedback for both versions. And we don't have, it's not clear which test may break on Java 11, especially since a lot of companies use a lot of native stuff. And one issue we hit on our instance is that we really got used to Java 8 on the world. So when we migrated, when we deprecated Java 7 in 2016, since that time we were investing a lot into test automation within Jenkins. We extended our pipeline library, we extended our test frameworks, but not all of the implemented things actually considered that there may be another version of Java. So it's not just deploying OpenJDK on the tool infrastructure. We need to update our pipeline libraries in order to parameterize them to support passing Java 11 through the invocation chain of our libraries. So in Jenkins project, we have one-liner Jenkins file definition, and the rest is in pipeline library. But all this parameterization is a problem. Then, of course, Docker images for agents, because if you want to run something with JDK 11, you need Docker image, and we containerize our instance a lot. We also have Windows setups, but for Windows stuff, we use tool infrastructure, so it's more convenient there. And Docker images for tools, because all tools we have, plugin compatibility tester, web UI test frameworks, etc., they can provision Docker containers inside. Because if you want to test, for example, SSH agents plugin, or if you want to test LDAP plugin, you need to provision Docker container, connect to that, verify that everything works, and some of these containers need updates. So there was a pretty big chunk of these Jenkins on Jenkins patches. And if you use Jenkins, and if you consider updating your project to Java 11, it's probably something you may hit. It's not a big deal, so we were able to update our instance in a few days. And we still have a lot of follow-ups because we haven't run the full test use yet, but it's a problem which everybody in this room will probably hit eventually, because Java 11 is here to stay. So at some point, maybe in 3 or 4 years, we will have to migrate, or maybe not. Let's see. So Jenkins on Jenkins, I can show you some pipelines, but generally it's what we did. We now extended our pipelines, so they run JDK 11 and JDK 8 in parallel. So there is not so much magic inside. We just extended all these pipelines. It looks a bit ugly, because when we were developing this pipeline, there was no support of nested stages. Now there is support of nested stages for declarative pipeline, but since we use a library, we still use a scripted pipeline, so that effectively that there is execution of build, test reporting, so there are multiple stages within the block. But if you use Blue Ocean, this is what you get right now for such complex flows. Okay, if you want, I can show it later. I've already spent something like 85 minutes, so I will briefly close down, and then if you want, I'll show how it works in real. So current state, as I said, we are here. So if you want, you can run Jenkins with Java 11. There is still some topics ahead, mostly around testing, because if you want to enable it in production, you need to ensure that you have a contributor team which is able to support the things, because we expect many things to fall out. And actually, we still need to finish some patches like pipeline support, which I mentioned already. It's related to JBoss remoting and other such internal things. Then official Docker packaging, we still haven't finished that, because we have continuous delivery flows. Now we need to make them official and make them available as a part of standard images. So it's almost done, but it's not done yet. And last but not least is CI flows, because we have several test frameworks. Before we release in preview, we want to run all of them in order to discover as many issues as we can. And not everything has been executed so far. We did a lot of exploratory testing. We are pretty confident that key plugins work. But for example, I know for sure that Jacoco plugin will fail. And there is a test which should show it to me, but so far it doesn't show it to me. And we need to invest a bit into test infrastructure before we go to GA. What else we need to do? Yes, as I said, there will be a lot of Java 11 maintenance. So if you update your projects, be ready to long maintenance period, because if you don't have 100% test coverage for your application and for your libraries, there will be glitches in some code bases. Irregular reflective access, technical debt is something we are going to do. I believe we will never finish it, but at least it was accepting pull requests if somebody proposes them. And Jenkins X serverless, Evergreen, and other sub-projects, they will also need to be updated for Java 11. So it's still TBD how it's going to happen. We are going to work with these sub-projects, but it's an open question. And of course, Java 12. So Java 12 is much better than Java 11 and Java 9, as far as we know, but somebody still needs to update. And Oracle switched to 6 months release iterations. So now this topic will pop up every 6 months. So what we need to do, we need to have infrastructure ready to these frequent updates. So there is still a lot of investment. This summer, Jenkins joint quality outreach program. This is a program been run by OpenJDK, etc. So a lot of open source projects contribute there. So they get some feedback, some expertise from OpenJDK team, and in return they set up test automation, integration testing, and report defects back to OpenJDK project. So this is how it works, and we just joined. We submitted a few reports, but it's still a lot of things ahead. And we need to prepare to more breaking changes, because even now, Java 8 isn't going anywhere in 3 years. So it's a question how many Java versions we will have to support in 3 years, because it may be 4. Because there will be 2 LTS baselines and maybe a recent non-LTS baseline, but it's still 4 versions. Is something which requires investment. Sometimes there are incompatibilities, and we will have to address that somehow.
So you will support non-LTS version? I'm
not sure. So I think a good start is to support LTS version and then to think about
Obviously.
that.
Obviously.
Yeah. But I believe that it makes sense to start testing earlier, because the most of the issues we hit, it's not because of Java 11, it's because of Java 9, Java 10, and maybe our ignorance of these versions, because we just set a flag and we're happy with that.
That's internally, but will you support those intermediate non-LTS?
So technically you can run with them. But I believe that we will be slightly behind features.
Okay.
So for example, when Java 12 gets released, nobody knows what's going to be finally removed from there, and every removal is a problem for us. Every compatibility change is a problem for us. There are some things which may blow up entire Jenkins. For example, some misc signal. It's deprecated starting from Java 10, I believe, or maybe not, but if you want to exchange signals, you most likely use this library somewhere, and it's a part of core Java, so when it gets removed, many things in Jenkins may stop working. And there is a lot of such things which seem to be minor, but we never know what breaks, and we need to invest into testing. So I believe that we need to at least test with these versions, even if we don't formally support them. And if there are some people who want to try it out and provide feedback, why not? So now we have enable future Java flag. So when you set this flag, you get Jenkins running with whatever version you want. And I believe we keep it, so we won't restrict that. just in case you consider contributing to any open source projects, of course, Jenkins project welcomes you, and yeah, if you want to try Jenkins with Java 11 on your instance, just let us know. There are guidelines available in the project. You can try them. You can also test your projects, plugins with Java 11. So even if you just try and stop for your whatever pet clinic or whatever project your CI, and try to just running this build with Jenkins, it may provide us some feedback. And of course, if you want to contribute, a lot of minor improvements are available here. So we have several epics. This epic, yeah, probably we will need pagination in Jira soon. But yeah, it's one of the epics which we don't consider as blocker issues, like illegal reflective access and whatever. Everything goes there, so you can just come and take whatever you want and try contributing. And if you're a Java expert, yes, as I said, there is a platform special interest group in Jenkins. And actually, if you're interested, just join and we can work together. It's not only about OpenJDK. Actually, Jenkins formally runs on any JDK, but yeah, as you know, right, once debug everywhere, it applies to Jenkins as well. So we know that there are some issues with IBM Java, with Eclipse Java, there are issues with platforms. So if you use something exotic and if you're interested to provide feedback, it's something we would really need. Also, we are interested in operating systems, architectures, and of course Jenkins packaging. So there is a lot of stuff evolving there, and if you're interested in this area, just let us know. Summary. Yeah, just in time. Okay, so Java 11 adoption. I hope I didn't frighten you so far, because yeah, actually it was much easier than we expected. Because yeah, we were able to get a POC running on actually on Java 9, on Java 10 in 2 days. So 2 days, several contributors were able to get it running with major set of the features. And for Java 10 to Java 11 migration, we just spent 1 day. Of course, there is a long tail of fixes, integrations, upstreaming. So yeah, it's still about months, but even for the Jenkins core and for critical plugins, it's still a pretty big code base. It's millions of code lines, and we were able to migrate pretty quickly. But yeah, streaming is a big overhead, especially build and test automation. So you can build the stuff, you can run the stuff, but you know that all your continuous integration fails. You cannot release that easily. Probably you can, but we want to do that. So it's still a lot of overhead investment you need to do. What I really missing, firstly, is Java 11 compatibility scanners. So there is no tool which would you be able to run, for example, against your POM XML, and which would say that, hey, these components will want work for Java 11. And actually, for Java 9, for Java 10, I am not aware about such tools. If you know about them, please let me know.
There is just simple stuff to just know if you are late regarding the release of Maven plugin.
Right.
It helps.
But
yes. So yeah, you can use tools like Dependabot or whatever to set up automatic upgrade of your versions, and if you have a good CI/CD flow, you can keep versions up to date. And yeah, it's something which we do. For example, Jenkins X, they have Dependabot, so they automatically upgrade their dependencies. In Jenkins project, we still haven't got to that because there is a lot of historical stuff. So we use Spring Core. I have no idea which versions, but probably it was created 10 years ago. So there are other such versions. So yeah, we know that there is upgrade available. There are just 3 major updates between our version and their version. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So we need tools in order to know what we really need to upgrade. Then Maven plugins, they are always behind. So development tools are on the edge. So until you have development tools, you can do development. But surprisingly, it still takes a while till all the features are available. And yeah, Java EE is still a concern, at least for our project. Who does still use Java EE?
Support. JAX-B, JAX-VS.
Yeah.
Mainly.
Yeah. So for Java EE, I don't see enough tools with regards to newer versions of Java. So the projects got splitted, and yeah, this is a major concern for us. We can detach a lot of the stuff, we can refactor stuff to avoid dependencies, but yeah, it's a big work for us. So, takeaways. Yeah, Java 11 is here to stay. So, even if not now, maybe in 1 year, in 2 years, you will have to migrate. And it's better to start doing it earlier because, yeah, there is release cycle speed up, there are more features being delivered, and it's better to start working on exploring opportunities to upgrade right now. Because if you get a request from your boss to upgrade in 1 week because your customer doesn't longer get support from Oracle for his favorite version, maybe you will have a problem. So it's better to try it. And yeah, consider using OpenJDK if you target latest releases. Otherwise, there are packages like adopt.jdk or whatever either Amazon provided. So whatever works for you, just keep it in mind that at least Oracle JDK isn't something you should use right now, unless you have a contract with Oracle and you get paid support for it. So for Jenkins, yeah, there is special interest group, there are JEPs, and there are ways to run the stuff. And there is my demo here, just in case you want to try it out. It's mostly about configuration as code, but now it runs with Java 11. And regarding useful links for Java itself, yeah, of course, it's all kinds of JEPs, Oracle articles. There is a lot of documentation actually provided. So if you read this documentation, you can get a lot of information. And the entry point is the release notes. So recent versions of Java actually have good release notes. They reference all the JEPs. So they describe what's going to change, what's going to be deprecated. Obviously, it doesn't cover all edge cases, but it's still pretty decent amount of information, and we got a lot of hints there. Then there is a lot of different blog posts, articles about migrations. I personally like this overview blog post. Then about packaging, there is a series of blog posts from Stephen Colborn, including Java 11 drops. He writes something about Java 12. There is posts from Nikolai Parlok, etc. So if you go there, you can find a lot of information about Java. And yeah, I wish you good luck with upgrades. So I hope that yeah, it was informative for you. Yeah, I tried to represent experience of Jenkins project, but as I said, even if it looks horrible, actually it's not that bad when you start working with it. And it actually was much above our expectations. So in 2 days, you get everything running, including complex pipeline. Yeah, it's not what we expected at all. We expected maybe 1 month, we get something running, but 2 days, and we do a cool demo in Jenkins Online meetup. Cool.
Yeah, but you are a bit cheating because you are basically not using the modules, right?
Well, you are not obliged to use models.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main point of Java 9.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, if you have to use models, then yeah, for our ecosystem, it may be 1 year project. And to be honest, I don't expect it to happen because in our case, we go towards containerization, towards packaging, towards cloud native solutions. So if we have a choice between updating to Java 9 models or investing into cloud native technologies, we will take cloud native technologies, and it will render the rest obsolete. So yeah, I believe that we will be never migrating to models, but yeah, it's my personal opinion, and it doesn't represent opinion of Jenkins project. Okay. Any other questions so far?
I'm desperate.
It's not that bad. So development tools, yeah, it's pain, but the project itself. Well,
so prior to Maven 3.8, it's not supported.
No.
Maven compiler?
No.
No, it doesn't support multi-model, multi-release jars. So yeah, Nicola said that models are main feature. Personally, I think that multi-release jars is actually a much bigger feature, at least for Java developers, because yeah, it allows to adopt some bits of Java without breaking compatibility with previous Javas. which wasn't possible before. So, for example, we have a lot of reflection access to JVM because Java itself doesn't have good APIs everywhere. But what we can do now, we can create a multi-release jar, and we can adopt new APIs specifically for Java 9 and going forward. For example, for process management, because process management in Java 8 is a problem, and for Java 9 we get much better APIs. We don't need reflection there, and we just package everything, and it works. The problem is development tools, and Maven compiler was, of course, a blocker. One of Jenkins contributors, Nicola Delouf, he actually created a workaround for packaging multi-release jars without Maven compiler. So right now you don't need this workaround, but there is a good blog post about it. But yeah, now you just take Maven compiler and it works out of the box. There are still some issues with Enforcer plugin because Enforcer plugin tries to do more investigations. So when you run it on Java 11, etc., especially all kinds of access modifier, annotation checks, you need to be sure that all your components are updated.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.